With that, hello everyone. I'm Onolina from ThinkCards, and I'm delighted to usher in our new viewers and our returning viewers from yesterday to the final session of Junior Kolkata Literary Meet 2022. This is our sixth edition of curating this festival in association with the Tata Steel Kolkata Literary Meet. And again, while we would have loved to have these sessions offline, we are glad to be able to interact with you in this way as well. Today's session, and we're really glad to have someone like Salamander with us to wrap up the Lit Fest this year, because he's been a very close friend of ThinkArts since since the online space sort of expanded. So Salamander and ThinkArts first met when we asked him to produce a piece when the colors ran away for the Vancouver International Children's Festival 2021. And Salamander was the sort of artist and writer behind the piece, along with some wonderful illustrators and videographers. So that piece is also up right now on Book My Show if any of you are interested. And besides doing that, CG Salamander is also a writer, comic journalist, and editor who splits his time between Chennai and the Netherlands. He enjoys writing horror and likes manga, Terry Pratchett, and cows. His first graphic novel, Maithili and the Minotaur, co-created with Rajiv Aipe, was released in October 2021. And Salamander is currently working on his first young adult novel. So thank you so much for joining us all the way from the Netherlands, Salamander. And I'm happy to pass the mic over to you. And all the best for the session, and hope all of the viewers enjoy it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks a bunch for that super generous introduction. And hello, everyone. It's a lot of pressure to kind of end this to be the final session or whatever. And usually the way this happens is that I'm joined by my co-creator, Rajiv, and we kind of go back and forth with each other. And because Rajiv is busy working on the next book, he can't be here. So I'm afraid you've just got me. And what I want to do is to talk about Maithili and the Minotaur, but not talk about the book per se, but rather about the research or the tiny little elements that go behind the book. And perhaps I can kind of start this off by sharing my screen. Okay. Is this visible? I really can't tell because it's just me and my presentation at the moment. So if it's not, perhaps someone can text me and tell me that things have gone horribly wrong.
It's visible, Salamander.
Okay, brilliant. So I am the writer and one half of Maithili and the Minotaur, which is co-created by Rajiv Aipe. So that's Rajiv Aipe, by the way. And where is Rajiv Aipe? Well, I guess I'll answer that towards the very end of this session. But this is our book, and it came out last October, and it's the first in a series of many, many books. There's a lot of contention between how many books you're going to put out versus, so it's basically a series that continues to grow, and it's organic with many moving parts. And I think we should probably just dive right into this. This is our main character, Maithili, and Maithili actually lives in this mythical wilderness. So you can see Maithili's house over there, like towards the somewhere on the hills. And right behind that, you have the human town. So this is where all of us live. And right on the other side, across this lake of lava, and only joined by what appears to be the bones and remains of a scary creature, is Monster Town. And this is where Maithili goes to school. So Maithili kind of lives in the outskirts of this mythical wilderness, as well as the outskirts of a human town. And the reason she lives so in such a remote location, or the reason it's very neither here nor there for her, is because she's an outcast from the human town, and then has to kind of go and live with the monsters. But things aren't that bad for Maitli, because she has a whole bunch of friends. And I thought it would be interesting for me to kind of get into the way we've built this world together. Um, so when we actually go towards like the slides to follow, you will see that a lot of myth has gone into creating this world. By which I mean we have kind of appropriated myths from around the world, as well as kind of introduced our own indigenous Indian mythical creatures into this world. And at the same time, what Rajiv does and what Rajiv does best is that he kind of builds this bridge with his illustrations, because what you see here is quite a fantastical world. And what Rajiv does is that he brings in human experiences or childhood experiences that all of us have had. So you can actually see the lunchbox over there, and this is them traveling by a van to school, and it's the van driver. And the way he kind of ties this into human experiences or our childhood experiences and things that are absolutely mundane is what kind of grounds this otherwise fantastical piece of work and makes it kind of relatable. Um, and anyway, so Maithili is now in this world filled with monsters, and she has to go to school with them. And as you can see, this is a world that's super chaotic. Like there are landslides, then the bridges are rattly and are about to break and give way at any moment. There are strange monsters that are always out to get them. But at the same time, well, you have Maithili who's just kind of taking it one day at a time. And despite all these scary creatures in Monster World, for some strange reason, everyone fears Maithili the most. And this is not something we're going to go in with the slides, but yeah. Okay, so back to the myth behind Maithili and the Minotaur. So, like I said, this is actually a mix of of like real world myths as well as myths from India, and we've kind of peppered them throughout the book, basically. Um, you can see on the right, so that's Principal Thoth, who is the Egyptian god of languages and learning. So it's very sensible that he became a principal in this mythical world. And we, in addition to this, we kind of are constantly looking at Indian myths to kind of throw inside here. And the two primary source of myth that we've used are Indian and Greek. And a lot of the research behind this book kind of went into finding a connection between the two. For example, um, this is a manticore, and it's something that is almost exclusively Greek when we think of like a manticore. So manticores are these huge lion-like creatures with the wings of a bat, and then they also have a scorpion's tail that shoots out venomous spikes that paralyze their prey. Um, and that's kind of how they hunt, basically. And if you look at the face of this manticore, it basically looks like a middle-aged Indian man for the most part. And the reason it does so is because manticores, according to the Greeks, were found in India, uh, particularly the western part of India. And according to the Greeks or to Greek mythology, these creatures would kind of hide behind these bushes. And whenever people would approach them, thinking that, hey, that's just a man behind a bush, they would kind of paralyze them with their venomous spikes and hunt them essentially. Uh, and another reason why the manticore or how the manticore could kind of lure their prey was by using this weird trumpet like sound. So the only sound that they could make was a strange trumpet like sound, which sounded like screaming. So you would approach them thinking that someone was in distress. But yeah, anyway, so now I'm going to actually get a little deeper. I'm going to go a little deeper into the Indian myths that make up this little world of ours. And of all the mythical creatures in India, this one happens to be my absolute favorite. So this creature is called an Asunam, and it's a snake-like serpentine bird that lives in South India, particularly near the Nilgiri region. And these creatures are supposed to be incredibly formidable. They are so strong that they could lift a horse into the air with just its talons. They are incredibly fierce. They are scary, to say the least, and but they do, however, have one weakness. And their biggest weakness is that these creatures were phonophobic. So, what this means is that they were afraid of loud noises. So, there are accounts in Sangam literature about how the Asunam went extinct. And it so there are these accounts of ancient Tamilians going into the forests and playing their musical instruments to draw out these creatures, because the Asunam, they are lovers of music and anything that sounds melodious. So whenever they would hear birds chirping or just the beautiful sound of nature, they would get out of their caves and come out and kind of dance. So having figured this out, hunters would go into the forest and play um, their lyres to draw these creatures out. And when they would come and dance around in the air, you would have one person, a drummer, behind a bush who would play a loud drum beat that would kind of startle them and cause them to crash, come spiraling down into the ground. After which they were kind of just hunted and eaten. And that's the story of how they went extinct. And this is another favorite creature of mine. And but before I get into detail with this, I just want to point out that all of these illustrations are illustrated by Sheena Devaya, and this is actually an upcoming book that we're working on, which is a work of nonfiction. So there are many different types of alas, and the yala, they're supposed to be incredibly gigantic. You don't really see this with the picture on the left, but if you look at this sculpture on the right, what you can actually see is that this is an image of an elephant at the bottom over here, where my mouse is. And what's happening is that the elephant is kind of being hunted down by a large serpent. So, as this large serpent is trying to hunt the elephant, you have the Yala who is hunting this serpent. So, I think there is a passage in Sangam text that says something along the lines of this is a moment where an elephant is going to stamp on the enemy general's horse, while itself being hunted by a large serpent, while the serpent in turn is being hunted by this huge, ginormous creature that could cause waves when it moves, essentially. And now, as to what happened to them, they kind of just migrated away into the mythical continent. Anyway, um, okay, so here are two other favorite mythical creatures of mine, and these again, you have like a Greek and a Persian influence on this, and according to the ancient Greeks, the Keta Indicos is actually a, an umbrella term for um, okay, think mermaids, but instead of half human and half uh, fish, it's half fish and half animal. So you can see a mere cow over here, essentially, and this is sort of a mere badger. And this is the Keta indicos is an over encompassing term that kind of has it clubs all these strange part fish, part animal creatures. And these creatures were supposed to be found in ancient Sri Lanka, and they were incredibly friendly and harmless. And they would live there most of their time. They would spend in the sea, but during the nights they would exit. I mean, they would leave the ocean. They would come out, and then they would climb these trees and use their tails to kind of slam into the tree to have to eat date fruits. So they would knock fruits out of the tree essentially and eat them. And the creature on the left is once again a part horse, part fish like creature, and it's called um, a Farsi bari, and it's essentially a seahorse of sorts. And this is what the myth, this is how the myth goes, essentially. Um, these creatures are supposed to be so quick and so fast that that horse breeders would kind of seek them out, and they would want their horses to kind of mate with these, because a child that was fathered by a horse as well as a Farsi bari would result in the fastest creature in the land, essentially. And the reasoning for this is because the Farsi bari didn't have lungs but rather had gills. But there was one problem with how you got your horse to mate with this. And the problem was that a Farsi bari could smell a human from miles away, and they found humans absolutely revolting and repulsive. So what you would do is, or what people would do to hunt them or to get them, is that they would cover themselves in fish guts and try to smell as much as the sea in order to kind of get them. Um, I think we have a couple more mythical creatures, and then I guess we can open up this discussion and make it a little more interactive. But yeah, so this is the Karkadan, and it is an Indian unicorn. So if you look at this image on the left, you'll see that it has a huge horn. It more or less looks like a rhino, to be honest. And the myth behind these creatures is that once again they're found in the western parts of India near Gujarat, and the Karkadan have a long-standing rivalry and enmity with elephants, and these creatures would almost always destroy themselves into mutual annihilation. And there are records from the Greeks where they mention how a Karkadan would sharp its horn against a tree and then charge right at an elephant and kind of pierce it right into the stomach. And this in turn would cause the elephant to fall on the animal, ensuring the death of both creatures. And you have this third character called the rook bird, which is a ginormous, enormous bird that will kind of come, swoop down and carry away both the elephant and the Karkadan. And and yeah, and feed it to its kids. So it was a huge, ginormous bird. And the reason I've kind of written "Don't touch its horn" is because the carcadon's horn is supposed to be a cure for constipation. So anyone who touches a carcadon's horn will have horrible bowel movements. So not very advisable to do so. And I think this is the last creature in my list. And what we have here is a Rompo. And these creatures are super ugly, as you can see. And the reason they're so ugly is because they have rabbit faces, human ears. They have like the mane of a horse, and their legs are kind of a cross between a bear and a badger. These creatures can camouflage themselves into different environments, but are mostly, well, shy. And so what they would do is they would only venture out into the open during the nights, and they were scavengers, so they would only kind of hunt. I mean, they would only eat dead animals. So there are records of people trying to pretend to be dead in order to lure these animals out. And it's incredibly like all of these records that I'm talking about, it's really nice to read them because they're written about with such sincerity, as though these animals actually did exist. But yeah. Okay, so finally, this is something that Rajiv and I have been working on of late. And this is actually going to feed into the next book in our series, which is called The Forest of Forgotten Fears. And this is a short comic that we've made for Comic Sense, which is a comic magazine. And what we realized is that they had that there was a system myth equivalent to the book that we were doing. So we have kind of the story that takes place on the right, the page that you can see here. So this is a Russian myth about a Russian forest where strange things happen. I'm not going to go too into details, but the creatures that you find in this particular story are very similar or to a lot of the Indian mythical creatures. And the forest itself, I don't know. So there's this forest called Madikittan Solei, which basically just translates to forest of the spoilt mind. And what so the myth behind this, or rather the lore behind this, is that if you go into Madikittan Solei, and if you walk too deep into the forest, then the fauna starts to change, and you will encounter animals and plants the likes of which you have never seen. And of all these plants, there is one yellow flowering plant, which causes humans to confuse, to kind of forget their memories the moment it hits the ground. And it kind of, in essence, gets them lost in the forest, and many people, um, or many alleged people who go in there, are still trying to find their way out, walking around in circles. And it was very fascinating to find a myth that kind of correlated to this. So there was the Indian one, and then a very similar Slavic myth. And to answer the question of where is Rajiv, well, he's now working on the second book, which is The Forest of Forgotten Fears, which is the second book in Maithili and Minotaur. And it's coming out in the latter half of this year. Um, so, yep. And here's a hard sell for me. Um, Maithili and Minotaur is available everywhere where books are sold. I think we can probably make this more interactive now, because it's incredibly strange to hear my own voice. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Salamander, for sharing, an insight into the creation behind this book. And I'm sure the viewers with us who haven't read it yet, they are now keen to grab a copy after looking at the illustrations and the pages that you shared. So we have a few questions about the mythical creatures coming in at the moment, but before that, I also wanted to ask, if I may, a question myself, if that's okay. Uh, so, so as I was reading the book, something that occurred to me is it's a very layered story. There's, a lot of references that may not be pertaining to me. I think that I had to look up that, some of the phrases used was related to Rajnikant. And
Yeah.
and there were sort of these little bits, but there were parts that I related to quite strongly as well. So I wanted to ask you what that process was like of how you sort of uh, weaved in those layers in the stories. Is it like, acha, now I'm including this, now I'll include that, this bit can have that as well? Like, how does that work, if I may ask?
Oh, it's a wonderful question actually, and the simple answer to this is it's literally just Rajiv and I having fun, and this is how we see the book or the creation of the book. So Rajiv and I are essentially co-authors of the book, and the way we build it is that we build a few pages and then go back and sometimes revisit stuff and just add jokes here and there. So if you see a lot of the visuals, right, like say the school, the water bottle and in school and the semia and the lunchbox. So these are kind of common experiences that Rajiv and I shared essentially, and yeah, the Rajnikant references were something that I put in, and Rajiv has like a lot of these obscure references to bird watching that only bird watchers would understand. Like I think in this one place, he's made a joke about an Arctic tern that I, for the life of me, didn't get. But again, a lot of like people who are really into nature know what they're talking about. So it's this work where the two of us have just kind of layered it with by putting our own personalities into it, and as a result of which, to be honest, I think there are things about the book that Rajiv will probably not get, and vice versa, where I wouldn't understand it as well. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. And again, I understand exactly what you're talking about because I'm just remembering the flipping through the book and reading that. And there are quite a few questions about, I think the viewers were very taken by the mythical creatures. Um, One of them asks if the creatures were ever real or are they mythical or completely made up. There's a question about the Asunam, if it really existed, and a comment saying it looks like a phoenix, and another person asking what is a Minotaur. So I'm sharing all three at the same time, and they're sort of in the same area. Uh, and yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, so the mythical creatures that you saw are part of my next book. So this is Wit Hachette, and it's actually a collection of 100 mythical beasts. And I say beasts because I've told myself that it has to be mythical animals that are included in the book, and they all have to come from India. So I think, and I was very surprised at how organically the beast divide kind of divided itself between, say, North Indian mythical creatures versus Eastern versus Southern and Western. Um, and the way I've had to write this book or go about the narrative is that my main character is convinced that these creatures did exist, and he's going around trying to find them. And sometimes he finds clues, and there are these almost magic realistic moments where he sees like a beast, or he thinks he sees it, and then or he finds remains of them. I really don't know. I guess the smart answer to this question would be it resulted from a lot of cross-cultural interaction. So when the Greeks came to India, they would look at our temples and they would look at, say, something, a carving that was absolutely out of this world, and then they kind of documented this as a creature, as a mythical creature in their records. And the Kakudam, which is the unicorn creature, well, you can actually see that it kind of looks like a rhino. And because if you're, say, a traveler from ancient Greece and you're here and you look at an elephant and you've never seen an elephant in your life before, and there's this long trunk and there are two tusks, and it's an elephant is as absurd as any of the mythical creatures that we've kind of come across in this book. I think a Rompo is way more plausible a creature than say an elephant. And I think, but to kind of not to shy away from that question, it just so happens that one of the many mythical creatures in this book, which is a rat-eating plant, turned out to actually exist, and they found it in Indonesia a few years ago, I think in 2013 or something. So that's kind of added into the book as a oh, look, it actually might exist. So yeah, so that's the reasoning behind it. And what were the other questions? What is a
So,
Minotaur?
and if the Asunam really existed, and a comment saying that it looks like a phoenix.
Okay, so the Asunam existing, this is actually something I really want to believe in because they are my favorite mythical creatures, and the story behind how they became extinct is just so freaking tragic. And I really like them, and there are these records of literature saying that they kind of existed. So, but it is plausible again that maybe they were talking about a deer or it was lost in translation. But honestly, I would actually really like to believe that they did exist. And the phoenix, yeah, it does look like a phoenix actually. Um, the body of an Asunam, however, is more scaly. It's got snake-like scales to it, and it's a little more elongated. Um, but yeah, I can see how it looks kind of like a phoenix. And finally, this is a minotaur. So in Greek myth, a minotaur is a half human and half bull, basically. Not a very nice creature in Greek myth because he's in a labyrinth and goes around killing people. He's also the half son of. Oh no, it's a bit violent, the Minotaur story. So let's not get into that. But yeah, so it's this half human, half bull character.
Yeah, so thanks so much. And I also know that you're a big fan of a self-proclaimed fan of cows. And so, was the idea of bringing the Minotaur in, which is not a cow exactly, but there is the bull element of it, was that your idea, or was that Rajiv, or was it something you came up together when creating Maithili and the Minotaur?
So I think like this is one of those books where we had the characters first and we had nothing else. It was we knew that we had these two characters and that they were going to go on an adventure. And we knew that the characters were going to be called Maithili and a Minotaur. Minotaur definitely because I have a huge bias for cows and I really love them for some reason. I find them very calming and they have really nice big eyes and they're super cute. So when so when Rajiv and I were discussing this, Rajiv actually came up with character design. So he came up with 40 Maithilis and 40 Minotaurs. And we had so many of them. And for some reason, I knew that this was our Maithili and this was our Minotaur. And Rajiv also knew that this was our Maithili and this was a Minotaur. And a couple of friends who had shown this to at the time said, yeah, it's this. So these kind of stood out the most because they perfectly capture these two characters, which is Maithili, who is kind of fearless and spunky, and the Minotaur, who's nerdy and kind, and it's basically it's a book that's mostly about friendship. In all honesty, I know I've spoken about myths and creatures and all of that, but at the end of the day, it's just a really warm, fuzzy book about friendship. I Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing that. And again, the readers who haven't yet encountered this book, when they do get into it, they'll understand exactly what Salamander is talking about. And again, this kind of leads your last comment about the nature of the book leads to a nice little segue. One of the questions asked if this is a scary book. I do. So you've already kind of touched upon that, but if you'd like to add on anything to that.
No, not at all. Actually, it's not a scary book in the slightest. And actually, our publishers recommend that this book is for anyone who is 10 years and up. Um, and I think Rajiv and I were like, it should be 8 and up, because yeah. But I think ultimately it made sense to have this for this age group. And no, I don't think it's scary in the slightest, because it's at the end of the day, about school experiences and friendships, and there are some monsters in the book that want to hurt you, but that's just how life is, I guess.
Thanks so much. So I hope that assures the viewers.
Yeah.
And another sort of question that I wanted to ask myself is, so the book has these very interesting characters like Mr. Pooh, Nagesh, Arachne, and I don't know if and again I think we're missing Rajiv here a bit, because he would be able to share his sort of point of view as well. But when you were so where did the ideas for those characters and those designs sort of come from, if you could share a bit about that?
Oh yeah, it's actually perfect that Rajiv is not here, because Rajiv is like chronically modest, and he's just modest for no reason. And this way I think I can actually talk about how awesome his character designs are. So with Mr. Pooh, who is their class teacher, I actually tapped into the myth of a Puchandi. So anyone from the south or Tamil Nadu will know what a Puchandi is. And there are various different Puchandis all across India. For example, the Kokachi in Kerala, and you have the boogeyman, which is the Western equivalent of this. And essentially, the myth is that it's this creature that kind of snatches children away. So we wanted to flip this and have like a really kind Puchandi, and I'm kind of looking for this page. Okay, so this is Mr. Pooh, and this is what he transforms into. And I think all I said was Miss Class Teacher, and transforms into something, into a Puchandi. And this is Rajiv's interpretation of it. And it works perfectly. Whenever you see Puchandi throughout the book, it looks like this can actually turn into this. And you see the shirt ripping off, and, like the pants and everything. And yeah, and about the other two characters that you mentioned, Nagesh is my favorite character from the comic. So Nagesh is kind of the comedian in the comic, and again, for anyone who watches Tamil cinema, he's kind of gets his name from the comedian Nagesh. And yeah, and Arachne is again, that was all Rajiv. I just said villain, spider villain, and then he just did everything. All of that was him. So yeah.
And thank you so much for sharing that. And again, I'm sure the readers who, like the viewers who are catching glimpses of the illustrations in the book, are really keen to get their hands on it as soon as possible now. We have another question. I think this is in reference to something that was said at the very beginning when we started. Why does everyone fear Maithili? I think you were mentioning that at the beginning. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I'm not going to get into like the details that would probably spoil the plot for the future books. But the main reason everyone is scared of Maithili is because she's different. In a town filled with monsters, where monsters are the norm, Maithili is human looking, and she also exhibits some strange abilities that they've never seen. And like all humans, we are afraid of what is different, and that's probably the best. That's the best non-answer I can think of to not spoil the plot of future books.
So I think the answer is wait and find out, and
Yeah.
but you definitely will. And again, I think once you read it, you'll form your own opinion. So if Maithili is somebody who should be feared, what do you think? And I will be sharing a link to the Penguin website for the book at the end of the session. So anybody who's interested can grab their own copy as soon as they want to.
Perfect.
Oh, yeah. And I'm also really glad you brought up, the 100 Mythical Beasts book, because I'm personally really looking forward to that book. And we have not a question, but a comment. The Indian unicorn, the kakaram that you mentioned, if I'm pronouncing that right, someone said it looks like the creature from the Indus Valley seal. Uh, so I'm not sure if that is something you can comment on, or if you know. But
I mean, I think I can just like throw in my own input here. To me, it looks like a rhino. To me, it looks like somebody looked at a rhino and then went, "That's a unicorn," which, in all fairness, is would be very accurate. I think there's another Indian unicorn in the book as well. I can't recollect it now because I have finished the book. I think it's been about 6 months since I finished it, and I'm now returning to do the final edits. But yeah, this 100 mythical creatures thing is, it fits so perfectly well because it's essentially research that I can use then for Michael and the Minotaur and expand on this world. And Rajiv's take on them is completely different. So if you have so there's like a humanoid wolf in this book, which is also like there's a Greek account of human wolf dog-headed tribes in India, and that's where that character comes from. And Rajiv is just changing, or is the way he explores these characters is just phenomenal, and that's something I'm really excited about.
as I'm sure I am, and as I'm sure the ones who will read it and haven't yet will be. We have time for one last question, and there's an interesting question which is not quite related to the books, so to speak, but why is your name CG Salamander, if one may ask?
Oh yeah, so this is a pen name I chose when I was 22 or something. It's been close to 10 years now, and yeah, I haven't changed it. So the smart answer to this question is, okay. So this CG in CG Salamander stands for Chinese giant salamander. And the scientific name of a Chinese giant salamander is Andreas davidinus, which is very close to my real name, Andrew David. So, yeah, that's the reason.
Thank you so much. And I think we're slightly out of time now. So with that, unfortunately, I know Manjari may have many more questions, but again, do grab a copy of the book if you're interested. And I'm sure there will be more such sessions, and hopefully one in person at some point. We
Yeah.
would very much look forward to that. But thank you once again, and Salamander, for joining us for the final session of Junior Kolkata Literary Meet 2022. And thank you so much to our audience and our viewers who are catching us from Facebook for sharing your questions, comments, and being with us today. And thank you once again to the Kolkata Literary Meet for helping us organize this event. So once again, hope you have a great evening. And again, Junior Kolkata Literary Meet is over, but we hope to see you in other ways and in other programs in the future. So do keep following us. And Salamander, thank you once again. I am going to be sharing a link for Maithili and the Minotaur in the comments. So please do, if you're interested, please do grab your own copy. I cannot recommend it highly enough. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for moderating this. It was lovely.
Wonderful.
So, yeah, and we'll see you guys later with Rajiv, hopefully next time. Yeah. So,
bye-bye.
Bye.